afternoon. After the music. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the fourth of 5 community input sessions regarding establishing new Sioux Falls School District boundaries for the 21-22 school year. For those of you who have followed each session, this will be a bit redundant at the beginning today. However, I don't want to assume that everyone has heard this information before today, so I'll reiterate it. As you know, we passed a $190 million bond issue in September of 2018. That seems like just yesterday to me in many ways. As a result of the Sioux Falls community providing an overwhelming show of support, we now must make sure we're using the resources that you are providing us that best serve our city. For this exercise, that resource is our school buildings. So, it's time to begin this process again. This certainly is not the way we intended to hold community engagement sessions on this important topic. However, the day we were supposed to hold our first in-person meeting at Memorial Middle School was the day that we canceled all non-essential activities in the Sioux Falls School District. The following day, we were encouraged to close schools to prevent the spread of COVID-19, the coronavirus. And as you know, we have been in a remote learning environment ever since. As we thought through the goal, we realized that the point was to hear from the public. While we would enjoy seeing you in person, your ability to be heard is still our primary goal. And this listening methodology accomplishes that goal. This topic is important to us, and we know it is important to families as well. That is why we are moving ahead with these input sessions. Over the past months, we have continued to receive community feedback via the Let's Talk application on our website. I know prior to the beginning of the community engagement sessions, we received over 300 pieces of information using that tool prior to the first engagement meeting. And thanks to you, we received many, many more since we started these community engagement sessions. Please keep them coming. We'll talk a little bit more about Let's Talk in a couple of minutes. We're confident that we're still on track to allow the school board to formally adopt new boundaries that will go into effect for the 21-22 school year. And we're confident that they can do that by the end of June, as we had originally planned. The date of the final meeting is on your screen, or at least I hope it's on your screen. We're down to one meeting remaining, and that will be next Monday night at 7 p.m. Now, a few housekeeping items before we start taking questions. In order to accommodate all questions and callers, we ask that you only call in to ask your question once during the course of the 5 meetings. We want to give everyone a chance to be heard. You are welcome to listen to all of the meetings, but please, one call per person so we can cover the largest number of topics in the 5 meetings that we have arranged. Make your questions or your comments succinct, and know that can be tough from time to time. However, in the first 3 meetings, you've done a great job as a viewership and as those who have called in making that happen. In order to get to as many questions as we possibly can, we're hoping to keep each question and answer to a total of about 3 minutes. And as you can do the math, that'll give us about 20 people an hour to hear from. If someone has already asked your question or made the same point you hoped to make, please remove yourself from the call queue so that we can move on to another topic. Throughout this process, we've had the Let's Talk tool available on our website. I mentioned that tool earlier. Submitting questions and comments via Let's Talk equates to the same level of input as if you called in here tonight or this afternoon. The school board will receive all of those comments, just as they will hear all of the comments that you make today. If you are not aware of the Let's Talk tool, you can find it on our school district website. That website is sf.k12.sd.us. That is SF as in Sioux Falls, sf.k12.sd.us. There is a blue flag on the right side of the screen. Simply click on that vertical flag, select your topic, and write your question or write your comment. You will receive a follow-up email so that you know your information has been received. And finally, please keep your comments professional. That has been an easy task for you to this point. We hope we can continue it throughout this process. We appreciate the manner and the demeanor with which you have brought your questions and issues forward. I can assure you that no one intends to create a hardship for you or for your family. Our primary goal is to assign students to schools in a manner that maintains focus on the priorities set by the Board of Education. Those priorities include student safety, budget considerations, using natural boundaries whenever possible, and keeping contiguous neighborhoods together if at all possible. The number to call today is on your screen. It is 1-800-874-4559. 1-800-874-4559. Participants, you will be asked for a code. That code is Ben Schumacher. You will answer a series of questions like your first and last name, where your children attend school, and etc. The operator will place you on hold so you can listen to other callers, and then we'll let you know when it is your turn to ask your question. Finally, we're showing two options for you to look at and provide feedback. I think it's important for you to realize that many other options have been considered as well, and we've looked at other configurations to go along with these options. Also, we will continue to look for the best option available. I truly believe that what you see as our current options will be massaged as a result of this process and prior to any board approval in June. These are your schools, and we want to hear from you on how best to put the boundaries together. So before we kick off with the questions, I want to summarize a few topics from our first 3 meetings that might help with questions that currently exist and might help us to get to as many topics as possible in this meeting. One topic that has come up is, what about grandfathering? Will students currently attending a school be able to continue in that school? The answer, the decision to grandfather students has yet to be determined. Our task force gave information on this topic, as well as a student advisory group that provided feedback on this very topic. There was not a unanimous opinion, and our Board of Education will ultimately decide that answer. There's been a lot of dialogue through the task force and through our student advisory group on what we should and shouldn't consider for grandfathering. It is more likely that a senior would be grandfathered than a freshman, but there are no guarantees of grandfathering as we know that topic today. Many questions have come up on open enrollment and will it continue? We will have open enrollment in the future. Open enrollment will be predicated on the amount of room or capacity that a building has in place. The Board of Education sets the limits on building capacity, and if a building is under capacity, we will continue to allow open enrollment. Splitting of schools. Will any of our schools be split as students transition from elementary school to middle school or from middle school to high school? And the answer is, unfortunately, yes. We've looked to minimize the splitting of buildings as they transition from elementary to middle and middle school to high school. But just as we have today, we will continue to have a few schools that go in different directions during a transition. We will do our best to minimize that splitting of schools, but we will have some schools who split when they move and transition from one level to another. Another topic that has come up is, what about drive times And what about safe paths to schools? The answer is safe paths to schools are crucial in our planning. The school district currently sits on a path committee where we communicate with city officials on creating and maintaining safe paths to schools. That process is a dynamic process and not a static process. The fact that we will be changing boundaries will necessitate the fact that we stay on that committee and we remain steadfast in providing safe routes to schools. As we work to plan our new schools and we look at new routes, please know that we currently have students driving across town in many instances. When we look at current paths and current buildings, we see that those new buildings create not only new opportunities, but some new issues when it comes to safe paths to schools. Please know that those issues currently exist with our existing schools and our existing pathways. So we will do our best to maintain safety as we move forward. We will look at safety from the whole district perspective. At times, that whole district perspective can get lost when we look at a micro picture within the district and forget that we have to consider all students, all buildings, and all routes. Next question that has come up is, well, what about programming? And will we decide programming in these meetings? And by programming, I mean curricular offerings. My answer would be this, or is this. You've heard about the conversations in our first 3 meetings regarding Spanish immersion and the honors program. Those 2 programs are currently held at Edison Middle School, and there has been discussion on continuing to keep those programs together, and there has been discussion contrary to that scenario. The whole concept of programming is bigger than Spanish immersion and the honors program. We have English language learners programs in our district. We have very specific and several special education programs in our school district. We have the Challenge Center in our school district. I offer those up as just a few of the specialized programs that we have that require space in our buildings and require care and thought from the school district as to where those programs are placed, because they certainly impact the capacity no matter where they are located. That issue is a highly technical issue and one that won't be finalized in these community meetings, but recommendations will be brought to the Board of Education on programming, and our board will certainly consider programming as they look at finalizing boundaries. Finally, I want to remind folks the necessity of the bond issue was centered in the overcrowding of the schools in the Sioux Falls School District. That issue was never more apparent than when looking at our West Side schools. The 2 largest elementary schools in the state of South Dakota are Discovery Elementary and Pettigrew Elementary. Both schools hover around 1,000 students, and both schools are on the very west side of our school district. The largest middle school in the state of South Dakota is Memorial Middle School, also a west side school. In fact, if Memorial Middle School were a high school, it would be the 6th largest school in our state, behind Washington, Roosevelt, Lincoln, Rapid City Stevens, and Rapid City Central. No other high school in our state is as large as Memorial Middle School. And the largest high school in the state of South Dakota is Roosevelt High School. And it's not barely larger than the next largest high school. It's several hundred students larger than the next largest high school. The point here is that we have a problem to solve when it comes to distribution of our student population. And I know it's complicated, but we must move some of our students to help alleviate the overcrowding in our schools. And where that is particularly impacted is on the west side of our school district. Now, I know that took a while, and you are tired of hearing from me, so let's hear from you. Let's turn it over And Christine, we're ready for our first caller.
At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. We will pause for just a moment for the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from the line of Heather Borman.
Hello, Heather.
Hello, thank you. My question is regarding the grandfathering. You did touch on that as far as the decision is not decided for grandfathering. The reason I'm asking, I have an upcoming 6th grader, and we are in the Memorial District. If the boundaries change, will she have to switch schools the following year? And as you mentioned, it's not decided. So I changed my question as far as open enrollment. She has a younger sibling. Will open enrollment, if available, will siblings have preference?
That's a good question. You know, every meeting we've had so far, we've had somebody bring up the issue of grandfathering and then a nuance to it. And Heather, you've brought a new nuance to that question. So congratulations for challenging me here. I would say that let me talk about one provision first, and then I'll get specific to your answer. First of all, on grandfathering, you're exactly right. I don't have any other information than what I shared in the beginning in terms of grandfathering, and that it is yet to be determined. And I know that it is weighing on the minds of our Board of Education. So I know they will give that due consideration. The other thing that has come up is, what about a tag-along provision? So let's say I'm going to be an 8th grader and I'm grandfathered. What about my 6th grade sibling? Do they get grandfathered as well? And so that's something that our Board of Education will have to wrestle with as well. But now you ask a question that's nuanced even further regarding open enrollment. And I'm going to, if you see me looking off to the side here, I'm going to bring up Dr. Jamie Nold. Dr. Nold is an assistant superintendent in the district and is our expert on open enrollment. So I'm going to turn your specific answer over to Dr. Nold.
Thank you.
Heather, thank you for that question. Currently, within the provisions of open enrollment, we do have a preference that is given as a sibling preference when we go through the process of open enrollment. So the way it would stand as of right now would be given a preference, but it's not given a guarantee. It will still be based on the number of available slots at that given school. So if that school is closed due to capacity, then obviously the preference would not matter. If there are spaces available, then we serve on a first-come, first-served basis with a preference given to those that have siblings.
Thank you.
That was a great first question, Heather. Christine, we're ready for our next question.
At this time, there are no additional questions in queue. Again, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. We will pause for another moment for the Q&A roster.
Okay, maybe I'll just talk for a minute regarding the 5 meetings that were planned for community engagement. Those 5 meetings were planned with 3 of them on Monday nights at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 7 o'clock. One of those was held last Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And this 4th one is being held Thursday, obviously, at noon. And our goal there was to make sure that we could get the widest audience available in the city. So we wanted to do our best to accommodate work schedules and opportunities for folks to be able to call in. So we hope our theory was pure and not confusing, and we hope everybody has a chance to ask their questions.
At this time, there are no questions in queue.
Okay. Well, let me talk about a couple of other things then. Number 1, I will tell you that when we open up the 21-22 school year, we will have 2 new buildings in the school district. Those are Thomas Jefferson High School and Ben Rifle Middle School. The new principal, for the inaugural principal for Thomas Jefferson High School, will be Mr. Dan Conrad. Mr. Conrad is currently the principal at Washington High School. He will be moving to Jefferson High School at the conclusion of this school year. Washington High School will then have a new principal, Carrie Papke. Carrie Papke was a longtime teacher and department chair at Washington High School, and most recently was an assistant principal at Lincoln High School. So we're certain Mrs. Papke will do a great job at Washington High School as well. Ben Rifle Middle School, their inaugural principal will be Shane Hieronymus. Mr. Hieronymus is currently the principal at Edison Middle School. He will remain the principal at Edison Middle School this coming year, and then will also transition to be the new principal at Ben Rifle Middle School the following year. So a little bit of an administrative dance there in the schools to be prepared for the new openings. I've also talked a couple of times about our Board of Education and their preparation for this process. You know, they've got some big decisions to make in June regarding what these boundaries look like. I know they've heard from many of you. They will be getting a report on June 3rd at a work session at the conclusion of these 5 community meetings. And in addition to information that came from 3 task force meetings that we've had, and we will have 1 more task force meeting yet to come. I do know, and I'm certainly biased because I work with this Board of Education, I do know that they're taking this issue very seriously. I know they want to do what's right, and I know that what they're doing is and will be controversial. Here's the good news, or at least the good news as I think of it. I think sometimes we get caught up into elected officials and politicizing issues, and I would contend that our Board of Education is as local as politics get. These aren't folks that you don't know or can't know. These are your neighbors. All of these folks live in Sioux Falls, and all of these folks care about the Sioux Falls School District. So I know they care deeply about this topic and all topics Sioux Falls. I will tell you that we have currently 99 people watching our live stream. In addition to that, we have people on KLRN, KLearn TV. I just don't know the number on KLearn TV. And I know Monday night we had 160 people. We know we had at least 160 people on the live stream, plus a population of folks on KLearn TV. And that's good for us to know, because so many times when we put something like this together, we don't know whether or not our message is getting out. Whereas if we were sitting in a gymnasium or in an auditorium, we would be able to see people and know that we are reaching at least some folks in our community. So through those live stream numbers and knowing that KLearn is also an opportunity for people to watch, we know that we're being seen in the community. So thanks for being a part of this particular process. Christine, do we have any callers in the queue?
Your next question comes from the line of James Schumacher.
Hi, yes, thank you. Question on the high school redistricting. Are there currently the options A and C, and I believe B has been, that's been eliminated. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay. And this is more of a comment than a question, but I would certainly prefer option C. I think it keeps the Roosevelt neighborhood more intact. And with option A, from what I can tell, even if you live 1 mile north of Roosevelt, you may be off to Jefferson. And to me, that just doesn't seem right. I would certainly think that option C would make more sense than A, in my opinion. And then one more question. Do you anticipate any COVID-related construction delays with Jefferson or the new middle school? Thank you.
James, ask that question again. I think I got it, but I'm not positive.
Oh, sure. The second question?
Yeah, regarding the construction.
I was wondering if there's any, I know with some other construction there's been delays because of COVID. You can't get certain components for HVAC, let's just say for instance. Do you anticipate any kind of delays with the construction on the new schools?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, thanks for your comment on A versus C. We appreciate your thoughts on that. In regards to your question, it's a really good question, and one that I've ended up addressing quite frequently lately. In regards to the construction at both Thomas Jefferson High School and Ben Rifle Middle School, there are two key phrases that I'd like to repeat, and they're true still today. One is that both projects are on time, and two is both projects are on budget. We have not experienced to date any coronavirus, COVID-19 delays, either from a workforce perspective or from a supply chain perspective in terms of being able to get the necessary materials at the appropriate time to continue the projects moving forward. In regards to your specific question on do I anticipate any issues going forward, I don't have the sense of prophecy to know that. I worry about that issue rearing its head into the construction industry. But all I can tell you is that at this point, it hasn't impacted the progress or the cost yet. So I'm hopeful that continues. And in terms of my anticipation, well, your guess is as good, if not better, than my guess right now.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Again, at this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. We will pause for a moment for the Q&A roster. There are no questions in queue at this time.
Okay. We will go a minimum of 30 minutes as we're approaching that here. So we have an opportunity to get your questions if you want to ask those questions or comments today. Please call now at 1-800-874-4559. And we will go up to an hour if questions and comments necessitate that we do that.
At this time, there are no questions in queue. We have a question from the line of Christoph Shirley.
Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Christoph, and I had not heard yet about congratulations to Mr. Hieronymus for the new position. I just wanted to say I fully endorse his skills, of course, with being a parent of 2 children in the honors program at Edison. We did not expect to find that resource originally, and it has been tremendous for our 2 boys, one of whom actually is on the autism spectrum. And so he is the first, as far as we know, student on the autism spectrum who is also intersecting with honors as a challenge. And since you mentioned that Hieronymus would be doing double duty at both the new middle school and the current Edison middle school for the honors program, it led me to a new question. has the school board considered the expansion of the honors program, especially with someone who already has expertise in the program, being Mr. Hieronymus, and expanding that so that the west side might also be in an opportunity for the honors program that might allow the honors program to continue in its central location at Edison, but also have an opportunity on the west side rather than just trying to shift all of the honors students to one location?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The short answer to your question is yes. That conversation has taken place, and it's taken place multiple times. I don't know that it's taken place at the board level necessarily, but it has taken place at the administrative level multiple times. And I would expand the thought, though, even beyond the honors program. We've thought about it in conjunction with Spanish immersion. We think about it annually with the variety of our special education programs that we have. And all of those programs that we don't necessarily have the volume to offer at every building, yet we have a greater volume than one building can hold. We think through where should we offer those programs, and the honors program is a terrific case in point. Do we still need one offering at the middle level, or should we begin to expand that offering? Well, I don't have an answer for your question. Well, I think I do have an answer for your question. I think your question was, has that been considered? The answer is yes, and I would tell you it continues to be considered with no firm answer to that question yet at this point.
Okay, thanks. And I also wanted to say we've had one son who graduated from the honors program at Edison and is now attending Lincoln Accelerated programs. And that's been, again, a really good program. So we're looking forward to the challenge of moving our younger son with his challenges over to that same program, because we know the team. So we'll just stay tuned for everything, because we know that those pieces are always in motion. But I did want to encourage you guys that you're on the right track, at least with the honors program transitioning to accelerated classes and all those things that those kids have been capable of. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you, Chris. I'm certainly proud of those offerings.
Your next question comes from the line of Sharon Winstra.
Good afternoon, Sharon.
Yes, hello, actually it's Sharon Weinstra, and thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to ask about, I don't know how long current boundaries have been in place, but do you anticipate a certain time period for new boundary lines to be in place, and then is there, 5 years we reevaluate, or maybe I'm getting too far ahead of myself, but I was just curious if you've thought about that.
Well, no, you asked a great question. Let me back up just a couple of years ago and think through the conversations we were having in district at that point, when we didn't know that the bond issue would pass or not pass. And one of the things we said was it's time to redo boundaries, even if the bond issue would not pass, because we have some odd circumstances. Many odd circumstances have been pointed out. If we would go to boundary A or boundary B or boundary C, and no doubt that that's true. But I'm telling you, we have some weird scenarios right now where an example would be, we have students who live fairly near Washington High School who are in the Roosevelt High School attendance boundary. So we definitely needed to redo boundaries, whether we passed a bond issue or not. So that's number one. Number two, to get more specific to your question, we haven't put a specific timeline in place for redoing boundaries, but I would say that probably 5 years or so makes sense, because you do need to look at, particularly in a growing community, how the community is growing up. And I think that it's important that we continue to look at that. I will also back up to the bound the bond task force that we had prior to the 2018 bond election, and that task force told us to revisit the issue of the bond in the schools every 5 years. I think, looking to see, every 5 years. So I think it's quite possible that within that context that we're looking at boundaries in about that same time frame. Through that process of looking at the bond issue, the need for the bond issue, and where we will grow inside the school district over time, the two areas that will be most prominent in growth were the southeast portion of our school district and the northwest portion of our school district, both from a residential perspective. So I think it'd be really important to us to continue to look at those boundaries as we go. It's a great question, and I don't have a firm answer, but if I had to come up with one, I think 5 years is what I would recommend.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good question.
Your next question comes from the line of Randy Rober.
Good afternoon, Randy.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Great. We have grandkids there at Discovery, and I just kind of caught up in all this here. It's just I got a kind of a two-part question here. I just kind of want to know how much of this public input really is going to be considered, and will the existing options have addendums attached for the public view and more public input, or will an option just be kind of bulldozed through? And, I hate being redundant on everything, but the safety, sidewalks, proximity, and convenience, they all need to be considered, and not all options include these items. Just kind of wondering who in the city that they've talked to about the safety issues. Is it the police department? Is it an engineer? Or who have they been talking to about the safety issues,
Yes. I would tell you that we talk to the folks in the city, and we have, number one, we had city representation on the task force, and we continue to talk to city officials. That I'm assuming involves city engineers as part of that city planning process as well. And I would suspect that involves civil engineers who are adept at this sort of conversation as well. The other thing I would say to you, Randy, is if you consider our current boundaries, I would ask, and it's a rhetorical question, but I would ask, do you see any of those issues that exist today? And of course, the answer to that question is yes, without a doubt. And with the advent of two new buildings, a middle-level building and a high school building, we necessarily have to make some changes. As I mentioned earlier, the two largest elementary schools are Pettigrew Elementary and the elementary where your grandkids go to school, Discovery Elementary. The largest middle school in the entire state is Memorial Middle School, and the largest high school is Roosevelt High School. So that's a high concentration of students, and that will be an area that has to be impacted through the movement of the redoing of the boundaries. Looking at the safety of the students is something that not only has been considered, it will continue to be considered, and nothing, in my opinion, is being ramrodded. If it was ramrodded, I certainly wouldn't be sitting here or standing here for 5 different times taking on community input. We certainly wouldn't have a task force that has met 3 times already and will meet again. And we certainly wouldn't have the public meetings, the Board of Education meetings that will take place in June. I don't see how anybody could arrive at the conclusion that those things are being ramrodded given those opportunities for public input.
I believe I asked if there was going to be any addendums attached for public view and more public input, or will it an option just be bulldozed through? Nobody said ramrodded, but bulldozed, same thing.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I would change my ramrod to bulldoze.
If there's going to be additional public input after all this has been considered and an addendum attached to one of these options is what I asked.
I don't know the answer to your question, Randy. I laid out the process and the plan, and then we'll follow that process and that plan with Board of Education meetings taking place in June, and those are public meetings.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
You bet.
At this time, there are no additional questions in queue. Again, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. We will pause for just a moment for the Q&A roster. At this time, there are no questions in queue.
Okay, we'll hang on for a couple minutes just to make sure everybody has an opportunity to call in if they'd like to. The number to call in is 1-800-874-4559. And we're up just over 100. We're up to 101 people who are with us on the live stream. So our numbers are growing. By 2, but growing. Christine, are there any other phone calls?
At this time, there are no questions in queue.
Let's wait another minute and see if we get another call.
If you would like, I'm sorry, I was going to give instructions again. Go ahead.
Oh, you please go ahead, Christine.
At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. We will pause for just a moment for the Q&A roster. At this time, there are no questions in queue.
Christine, are there any other callers in queue?
There are no questions in queue at this time.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time this afternoon. Got a good number of callers, and I appreciate that, and had a lot of people online viewing what we had today. We were wondering what sort of response we would get with this noon hour time slot. And I would say, well, it probably falls short of a daytime Emmy. It was certainly worth our time. We hope it was worth your time. We'll be back one more time on Monday night at 7 p.m. Until then, have a great weekend. Thank you.